I think the heart of Tvinn is really about retail adoption, because we see the huge societal benefits tokenization can bring.
Tokenization delivers options, and a lot of options. And what we see now is only just the start. There will be many more options to come. And these options are applicable and they are desirable, whether it's institutional or retail.
The adoption curve when it comes to crypto was led by retail side, the first movers. But now the big actors are coming in and they are saying real world asset tokenization is the next step.
Tokenization of real world asset. It has been really on top of the headlines of different international finance newspapers and news sites lately. And of course, there are some reasons for this, but there's also an opportunity for us to shed some light on this trend. And we have been able to invite Thomas Tallis and Lise Wessel from Tvvin to join us.
Thank you for
Great
inviting
to be here.
Yeah. Do I say Tvvin the right way? Because you have two V's and Tvvin, maybe? I don't know.
No, you pronounce it absolutely correctly. So the reason for the name is actually the two V's represents both the physical asset and the on-chain asset, but it plays on the name Tvinn and, creating a digital twin of a physical asset. So that's the background. So
that makes sense. And you guys, you also have been in the crypto space and blockchain space several years and in different initiatives, projects and companies. So please give me a little background of you guys. Lisa, you first.
Yes, thank you, Morten. So my background is I have been in marketing for about 20 years and having run several marketing agencies in the Nordics. Back in 2021, I ventured into the blockchain / Web3 space, both by co-founding a lending and borrowing platform, as well as starting up an agency serving the crypto market with worldwide influencers and PR, specifically for the Web3 space. And after that, I've also been advising several projects on how to enhance their market position within this industry. And now lately, since the start of 2023 is when, together with Thomas and several other team members, we started what is now Tvinn.
Thomas?
I dipped my big toe, I think you could say, into this space quite some years ago now. I took a very ambitious project way back when, feels like a different lifetime, but 2017, it was an alternative way in which retail customers could save for their pensions. So rather than putting fiat into a pension fund, converting fiat and securing crypto positions. And we took it to the FCA in the UK. It was a very eye-opening project. We were way too premature. So the FCA were shocked and delighted all at the same time. But it allowed me to really get to understand the sort of what we needed to overcome. And I'm very glad to say that actually in 2024, we have now collectively overcome so much of what was uncertain back then. But after that project was unfortunately shelved because, as I said, it was premature, I then went on to co-found a lending and borrowing protocol within DeFi. That was in 2021. And then in 2022, I stepped out and then I started to advise an array of crypto projects, both from the investor relations side, but also in terms of how to sort of capitalize on their market positioning and which markets they should focus on. And then I came into what I am now doing, which is co-founder and together with Lisa spearheading Tvinn. So it's summarize a number of years in about a minute. But yeah, it's been a great experience. I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah, but it also sort of reflects changes in the market, maybe, because now in 2024, it seems to be the year of institutions moving into the crypto space on different agendas. And of course, we have first the ETFs, the Bitcoin spot-based ETFs that launched 10th of January, that has moved a lot of the different capital funds into the market. And driven the Bitcoin prices upwards. But for instance, Larry Fink, which is sort of the god of this new wave, you could say, he says that step one is ETFs, but step two is tokenization.
Yeah.
And last week, both you and we read an article and a news that they were now moving into a fund, about $100 million, I think, together with a partner, tokenization of some types of real-world assets. And then it could be nice to hear what is real-world assets and what is tokenization of them.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. So yes, real world assets, it's kind of in the name. It's something that exists in the real world. So, I mean, it only really makes sense for us who are kind of crypto native because we are used to dealing with a lot of on-chain assets that don't actually have another value off-chain. It's totally related to the on-chain value. So real world assets is assets that are recognized as having a value in the off-chain world. When it comes to tokenization of such assets, it's the process of bringing that value on-chain, living on the blockchain, so to speak.
Yeah, but included in the naming of real world assets is both real hard assets. I mean, like metal and gold and silver.
Yeah.
And you even have more software related assets. I don't know, like bonds and stocks and things like that. So it's quite a large range. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is a large range. So you have assets such as precious metals, commodity, you have real estate, you have stocks, you have bonds, you have debt. I'm debt. Yeah, sometimes I can't pronounce it. So there is a lot of different assets. It's even, fine art, could be agro-commodities, there's so many assets that's considered a real world assets.
Yeah. I think I was going to say, I think even actually Larry Fink himself, if it's not him, it's another industry sort of giant in that respect. I've heard that there is now a common belief that all financial assets at some point will be tokenized. And so that is really the direction of travel that I see that we're going in, and that, as Lise pointed out, it really is a infinite supply of the question would be, where does real world assets actually stop? And that's something that actually we can't answer because it is continuously unfolding. There are new RWAs literally on every corner.
Yeah, and why is that? Why is the appeal of this tokenization? Couldn't we just do stocks like we do today? Maybe gold isn't that easy, but still, do we need this tokenization?
Well, I think that there are very clear benefits to tokenizing financial assets, and that is why you're seeing big institutions such as BlackRock moving into the space. And I think the benefits and the appeal is different whether you look at it from an institutional side of point of view or the retail side point of view. So on the institutional side, I believe the operational and capital gains efficiency provided by tokenization is the key driving points. So basically, tokenization solves some essential challenges that have been existing in the financial traditional world. And that is why you're seeing huge institutional interest right now. Larry Fink himself also pointed out when he was interviewed about Bitcoin ETF, and he made the statement that you referred to earlier, that he sees a huge benefit in terms of combating corruption because of the transparency that blockchain provides. But as I said, next to that, you got the operational and capital gains efficiency. And if you're a huge or even a mid-size asset manager, you might be having a portfolio consisting of billions of dollars. So even a 1% of capital gains efficiency could basically convert into hundreds of millions of dollars in extra profits. So it makes a lot of sense from their side. Although we're dealing a lot with the institutional market, I think the heart of Tvvin is really about retail adoption, because we see the huge societal benefits tokenization can bring. So basically, when you tokenize assets, you are also able to fractionalize them into much smaller components, making them instantly accessible to a much larger portion of the global population. For example, if you look at certain assets, they have been very inaccessible to people. And I mean, we're both here in Norway, and Norway is one of the richest countries in the world. So we're probably fortunate in that we have the ability to invest in certain assets that is, for a much larger part of the global population, totally inaccessible just because of the high entry level. At the same time, tokenization cuts out several middlemen. You don't have to deal with brokers. You can just buy it digitally as long as you understand how to do that. And I think that's also part of the process now. We're going to make it accessible also, sort of, so if you're not even into crypto or haven't invested in crypto before, you easily know how to invest into digital tokenized assets. So yeah, there's two parts of it, I would say.
And I think a good word to illustrate what Lisa's just described is options. Tokenization delivers options, and a lot of options. And what we see now is only just the start. There will be many more options to come. And these options are applicable and they are desirable, whether it's institutional or retail. So right now, if we are, for example, thinking about a retail investor, what they could put their investments into are, relatively restricted. But when you think about the what's coming, the types of real world assets that will come on chain, suddenly there will be an array of options in which they can then decide. So it's not, they don't just have, for example, the traditional ISAs or putting fiat into a pension fund or whatever, and that's, it's not to say that they should stop doing that, but I love the idea. I love thinking about when somebody has options, because options are always good, because when you can then compare and see what you have available to you, then you can make the more decisions or the more possibilities you have, then the likelihood is that you're probably going to end up making more better decisions than not.
So more options and more accessibility
Yes.
also for retail investors. But why now? Because in this crypto space, there has been ups and downs, and there has been launches of different kind of vehicles to try to get the people on board. And one that has succeeded is stablecoins, which you also could sort of call a tokenized real world asset, but pegged to the US dollar. But that has been a success more or less since 2014 or 2015 or something. Right. I think that's about $140 billion into that space at the moment. But why haven't the story moved on to the other different assets before now?
Well, you are right, Morten. US-backed stablecoins like Tether, they are a form of tokenization. And when you cited 2014, that was the year that Tether then went and got the regulatory authority to do what they ought to start doing, what they are now doing in a great way. So you would be very right to say that a stablecoin such as USDT is really an example of the first type of tokenization of real world assets. why has it taken between 2014 and now, within the 10 years? I suppose it's, you could say it's to do with the curve, the adoption curve. When they tokenized, or when they backed dollars to their token, it was a point where there was a need. There was starting to become more interest into the crypto space in general. There was a need to have an ability to transact and to pay for purchases or for trades, and it served what the market was looking for, and then it's growing from that point. Now what we're seeing is that the adoption is now moving into a further phase. So it really it's not necessarily a surprise, because you need to see that there is I suppose a minimum threshold before new advances start to really sort of take hold. And this is really what we now see with the advancement of technology, and obviously blockchain, that we are now able to move into the next phase of tokenization of RWAs, and this is exactly what Tvvin is embracing and is rolling out.
And I want to add actually there as well is that the adoption curve when it comes to crypto was led by retail side, the first movers. Now, actually, I think this is shifting. Now the institutions are coming in, and we mustn't forget that a lot of real world assets, such as precious metals, stocks, bonds, etc., who are the real market for those assets up until now? It's been the institutional market. There is, most of the transaction when it comes to these assets really comes from the institutional side. And the institutions haven't been able to come into this space because of regulatory restrictions. Also, they've been hindered due to sort of the bad rep of the industry, because we've had a lot of bad actors creating an environment that, institutions have stayed away. But now the big actors are coming in, and they are saying real world asset tokenization is the next step in the financial evolution. So it's creating a whole different scenario, and it's bringing a whole enormous new market into the on-chain space. So I think that is why it's different now, because you have had real world asset tokenization projects also prior to now, but they've still had that sort of limited sandbox, or being able to sell to crypto investors, and now that market is exponentially expanding.
I was also going to say that what I'm hearing from institutions is that everything that Lise just said, but they are really what they understand and what they like is that what we're offering, for example, which is tokens which fully backed by gold, or subsequently will then be rolling out the silver, platinum, and palladium. It's one-to-one backed. It is, in their eyes, what they now understand is that it's another route into assets that in some cases they have been investing into for many years. So it makes sense to them. And when you actually break it down, and when you're presenting what Tvvin is offering, and they actually understand that it's not going into a token that is backed by just hype or perception. It's actually backed by assets that, as I said, in many cases they themselves have been trading for a long time. Then that is also, it's about right timing. It's about confidence. And as I said before, it's really about a shift into these next phases that we're seeing is that we're seeing tokenization being able to offer.
Maybe my next question consists of 2 points, because the first one is, I wonder, why gold? Why not real estate? Why not bonds? Why not stocks? Why not whatever? And the second one is, if I want an exposure to gold, why can't I just buy it and take it home? That's not maybe very realistic for me. The second one is maybe buy a gold mining company. maybe an ETF pegged or linked to gold, or a mutual fund that invests in different types of gold assets. Why tokenization of gold? What is the attraction of that?
So whenever there is a new involvement, you need to look and or you need to understand what is understood from a widespread global perspective. So let's say that we weren't starting with tokenizing gold, but say we were tokenizing precious whiskey, which, by the way, is totally possible. How many people now would be able to sort of understand and get their heads around that you have a barrel of whiskey, that the barrel itself is worth millions of dollars, and these barrels do exist. You never get to see them in a bottle. They're basically investment products. But if we started with something as, call it obscure, as very precious whiskey, and tokenize that, are we really going to be doing tokenization the justice that it deserves now? I would argue that probably not, because it'd be too far out there. So you need to sort of start where the asset is understood. What better asset than gold? Gold is understood whether you're from this corner or that corner of the globe. Actually, people know that gold is a precious asset. So it's also coupling into the sort of the reality that we start with assets like precious metals, where you don't have to go out and explain why they are precious assets, because everybody knows that they are. And once that is wanted and adopted, you can then start to sort of delve deeper into the world of real world assets. Start looking at agro commodities. I mean, why shouldn't we tokenize coffee and cocoa? Why shouldn't we tokenize as Lisa mentioned earlier, perhaps art or intellectual property or music rights, etc. All that can come, and it will come. But we're starting with gold because it's an excellent asset. It's also, in my opinion, it serves as a good hedge against, for example, fiat inflation. It's gold is considered to be one of the sort of the most secure stores of value, and has been for millennia. So it's a great asset to start with, but it's also because we don't have to spend too much time explaining why we're tokenizing it, because straight away people get it.
I could also add there that we are in an extremely fortunate position to be able to do so. If we wanted to start a tokenization project in many other asset classes, it's open to anyone, really, because it's easy to tokenize in one way real estate or other assets, because it is easily accessible in one way to get access to it. Whilst with gold, there is not easy to get a partnership such as we do with a LBMA certified gold supplier who has their gold vaulted in the Channel Islands, one of the most desirable locations in the world, and which is a hub for institutional investors. So I would say that it's an optimal starting point, both for the reasons Thomas mentioned, but it's also very, very fortunate for us that we have those connections, because it's much harder for someone to, start off with tokenizing real estate and then move into gold. We actually have formed a lot of strategic partnerships in the background, because other tokenization projects actually want our gold on their platform, because they know that it's really, really hard to get access to the amount of gold, the type of certification that our gold holds, and the location of the vault. So I think in so many ways it creates this sort of wonderful, stable, golden foundation for what Tvvin will be the long term, which we envisage being a go-to marketplace globally for anyone wanting to enter real-world assets.
And if you imagine a platform, whether it's ours or and let's speak about ours, because that is what we have and what we're passionate about. So if you're attracting people to our platform, and they're commencing by investing into tokenized gold, the probability that you can then take that customer, maintain them as happy customers, and then allow them to progress as we bring on more real world assets, that probability is higher because of their entry point. So again, this just backs into, or also backs up with what Lisa just said, is that if we were flipping it around and tokenizing something that perhaps needed more creativity to understand why we were doing it, the ability to bring people on probably would not be as in such high volume. So it's together with the ability. Our source is an amazing source. We're very lucky to have that, and also the fact that who doesn't want gold?
What if we try to understand the different roles and the different workflows sort of in this industry? Okay, you have a vendor that supplies the gold. You guys, are you then more of an issuer of tokens, a platform for?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, so I can explain the process, but I am aware that we didn't quite answer the differentiation between the different ways of investing into gold. So I don't know if you want me to cover some of that first, Morten, or should we skip that?
Yeah, well, you could do that. For instance, still just do it compared to ETFs. Then do it a little simple at the moment, because ETFs is rather known. And at the moment, I think that the Bitcoin ETF has passed the silver ETFs, but not the gold ETFs yet.
Yeah,
but perhaps that can happen. I don't know.
So the difference between ETFs and tokenized gold is largely also to do with the ownership. So with an ETF, you own a part of or a share of a fund, and you have sort of counterparty risks associated with that. Also, there usually is some sort of fairly sort of minimal investment and the fund management fees related to ETFs. With tokenized gold, you are the owner of the underlying gold through your digital representation. Of course, there's also many other benefits in terms of having liquidity and being able to go in and out freely between your different tokenized assets. So, for example, with gold or with Tvinn gold, you'll be able to earn a yield on that gold by us using the underlying assets in a monetization initiative. Mechanism, yes, sorry. Of course, it's your choice on whether or not you want to do that. You could also use the gold as collateral to take out a stablecoin loan and go into the DeFi space and use it for whatever you think will create the best yield in the DeFi space. So there is many ways in which a tokenized gold is a better option than ETFs. And of course, you have physical gold that you can invest into, and that's how traditionally a lot of investors have had their gold, either investing into gold that's in a vault, but then you have to pay insurance, you have to pay vaulting charges. For example, in India, typically a housewife would go out every week and buy gold and keep it at home. But, there is still, less ways in which you can transact with that gold. And of course, there is a risk of someone breaking in and stealing your gold. So there are many different ways, of course, to invest into gold, but we think tokenized gold is definitely the one that gives and opens up the most possibilities for you.
Will I also then be able to see in the vault that these are the gold that I own?
In one way you can, but not like with vaults, there's very, very high security in terms of, we can't put up cameras as such, because it causes some security concerns. But there will be ways in which, you can actually interact with the gold in a more digital format. That is actually part of our roadmap, is we're creating these virtual vaults where you can actually see your gold holdings grow. But there will be ways in which you, through oracles, etc., will be able to confirm that the gold that you have purchased is actually there. And of course, our gold supplier and vault is a regulated entity, so there is lots of checks and balances in place. And eventually you will also, if you wanted to, you could redeem your gold token against the physical gold if that is what you wanted.
Yeah. I was also going to just a very neat way to sort of summarize the differentiation between, say, a gold ETF and twin gold is that with an ETF, as Lise was explaining, if the fund is badly managed and something goes wrong, it calls into question about your investment, because your ETF is simply a share in that fund. What happens to the investment? And that's not a good position for any investor to be in. If something were to happen to Tvinn, the operational side of Tvinn, your gold is your gold. And although it'd be a sad day if that were to happen, it wouldn't actually affect the token holders, because their tokens would actually allow them to have their gold repatriated to them. That's essentially the biggest, and I think probably one of the most important differences, is that what we're actually selling is gold through an advanced and a new format, which is a token, versus simply a share, which is only as good as long as the fund is actually being managed properly and successfully.
Okay, let's say that we now move on to the market. Let's say that you have the gold that you want, you have the setup, you have the platform, you have all that you need to go to market. How will you go to market, and what kind of partners do you need to go to market?
What we have been working on is forming a partnership with an already established license entity, and we're well on the way to getting all of what's needed in that partnership signed off. For us, that means that we will most likely, right from the start, be able to go to market in the whole EU and EFTA region, being able to both market and sell our gold tokens as well as our monetization services right from the start, because it will allow us to use our partner's MiFID II license. And that is obviously a key advantage for us. From when we started Tvinn, we weren't sure if we would be able to have that sort of licensing right from the start. It wouldn't stop us from being able to sell our tokens, because we could register prospectuses and all those normal kind of things that you do when you want to sell an asset such as gold. But with this partnership in place, it allows us to not only sell it, but market it, and also having our yield vault options available right from the get-go. So that is one key strategic partnership that we have been working on for some time, and which is very much going in the right direction.
When we're talking about go-to-market, obviously we mentioned, as we did, about the European single market / EFTA, but it is also very important to note that we have multiple inroads now being worked on for multiple market commencement. So we are absolutely we are focused on a global offering. So I just wanted to underline it in case any of your listeners think that we are focusing on Europe, although it's a very important market. But the answer is no. We're focusing on as many markets as we can be compliant and meet the regulatory requirements. So we will serve every market as we push forward, where we are essentially welcomed. The licensing that this partner that we've identified holds, importantly, it straddles both sides of the aisle. So the licensing serves both the accredited and institutional side, but importantly also retail. Mm-hmm. So it would mean that actually we can reach out to hundreds of billions of potential prospects across the single market.
But when we are talking retail and we are talking MiFID, then we are talking high net worth individuals or family offices, aren't we? Not the regular retail in the street.
No. When we say retail, this is non-accredited. This is non-high net worth individuals. So that's why licensing is essential. We can't simply go out and serve the retail, because the retail, the normal man on the street, they are protected, and rightfully so. This is what regulatory bodies protect. They are making sure that they are not being duped, or they're not putting their money into pyramid schemes or whatever it may be. But when we actually work under, and this is what we are now in the midst of finalizing, when you work under existing licensing, then that would allow us, and this is why it's such an important point to make. It would actually allow us to serve retail. It would allow us to serve the man on the street, and the licensing would be there to protect those retail investors accordingly.
Okay, so now we have gone to market in the primary market, but if I want to get out of this gold again and sell it in the secondary market, how can I do that?
So, I mean, you could just sell the gold back to Tvinn if you wanted to, or redeem it against the physical gold itself. That is something anyone who invests into Tvinn gold can do. But of course, the secondary market is also very important, and we can see that that's going to be where a lot of transactions going to happen, because you might want to use your gold and transact and get into other types of assets. So we are already in dialogue with several exchanges, OTC platforms, and so on about, obviously listing our Tvinn gold token. So this is definitely on the cards, and we have dialogues going with several parties regarding this.
And of course, when you have a tokenization platform up and running, and you have loyal customers and you have partnership, you can also, of course, move other types of assets into that platform. So what is the next step after the gold launch step?
So the immediate next steps is going to be silver, and then followed by platinum, palladium. And the reason for this is that all these other precious metals are at our fingertips through our gold supplier and can be vaulted in the same location. But subsequent to that, we are looking at lots of different alternatives. And one important part of the Tvinn structure is that we have what's called the Tvinn DAO. And anyone who holds our platform token, Twix, are going to be able to make proposals to the Tvinn DAO. So, for example, say you are a Twix token holder and you have this idea of some asset that you want to tokenize. Maybe it's novel, or maybe there's a novel aspect to it. You can then propose to the DAO, which then all Twix token holders can vote on, and you can get funding and an incubation service, because obviously we're building up quite a formidable team of both advisors, external legal representatives, and just a huge knowledge base of what we've had to kind of go through in order to get to this point. And we want to be able to offer that to other projects. They would then be projects that could be brought onto the Tvinn platform. And then through that, we have an organic expansion. Next to that, obviously, there will be some obvious candidates in terms of assets that we are already looking at, like real estate. We don't think that the market is quite optimal for real estate tokenization quite yet. So we're going to wait a little bit before we move into that phase. And then, of course, there's other assets such as copper that we're looking at. And Thomas, you look like you want to add something.
I was going to say I was going to paint a little picture, because it's always fun when you can put it into some pictorial way, in a pictorial way. And this is actually something that we really are very serious about, although it's probably a few steps away from where we are today. But imagine an apple orchard. So Lise was in her previous positions, when she was heading up experiential marketing throughout the Nordics, was working with South Tyrol or South Tyrolean apples. So here in Norway, when you go to the supermarket, most of the apples that you see are coming from orchards in South Tyrol, in northern Italy. Now, this idea would be, why can't we, or why shouldn't we, for example, tokenize either the orchard itself, or the orchards, because South Tyrol is made up of small, sometimes not so small, but different cooperatives, different farmers. What about if some of those farmers decided that they would actually tokenize part of their orchard, where the token would represent part of the yield that the orchard produces. The orchard produces apples. That is its yield, and those apples are sold. So therefore, the yield is monetized. So you can then quickly see that having tokens that represent part of an orchard that grows and sells apples means that your tokens also has a proportionate amount of monetary value. So that is the way in which things will roll out. Again, it's a little bit like my precious whiskey example. It's too early now to start looking at, for example, these types of next generation tokenized sort of commodities or assets. But it's I love this idea of the apple orchard, because in my mind, it's where technology and humanity meet at the crossroads. Because really, I can see how many people would feel really actually delighted to know when they look in their Tvvin wallet and they see that they've actually got some tokens that are represented in an apple orchard, or perhaps fair trade cocoa production in Ghana, or coffee, a coffee plantation in Ethiopia, or wherever it may be. You can see that yes, these tokens will actually make part of your financial portfolio. That's good for you, but there will also be a lot of sentiment, a lot of positive sentiment that sort of is built into this. You'll feel good knowing that you're owning such a wide variety of different financial assets. You're not simply it's not just about the figures. It's about also the subject itself. If you understand what I mean by that.
So you're painting a micro picture of where tokenization may go.
Not micro, I would say macro.
So, yeah, okay, but different types of implementations then, if you can.
Different types of implementations, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and if you add it up, someone has even said that they may think that before 2030, that maybe 10 or 15 trillions of dollars that will be related to the tokenization industry. And is that where you see this heading?
I tend not to get sort of caught into a number, whether it's this trillion or that trillion. All I know is that it will be in the trillions, and it's going to be significant. I think we'll look back at this point and we will just think we never even imagined, even with the foresight that Tvvin has, we never even imagined how far this is going to go. So it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be enormous, but I literally have no idea, and I think even the very best minds don't really know. It is kind of shooting in the dark of when you're trying to put a figure in the trillions of what the total tokenization of real world assets, what that market will actually mean in terms of evaluation. But it's great. I mean. Sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
Just to add that, if you take a sort of logical leap in that, okay, financial transactions have happened, first physically, then it went into a digital format. Right now, it is going into a tokenized format. So in one way, yes, probably more or less all financial transactions will happen on chain in the future, as a logical step. Of course, I think it will be at different speeds depending on different assets, but it also allows for much more assets to be transacted by many more people. And that's what's so exciting about it. So yes, definitely trillions. I think every number I've seen is probably an underestimation of what the tokenized asset market will be worth. Because if you look at gold, for example, the total gold market is 13 trillion. Only 1 billion of that total amount of gold is on chain as we speak. And that is going to, even if just looking at gold, the possibility there is going to be enormous.
And we could actually, just whilst we're on this topic, blow it just to really stretch it and stretch our imagination and make it sort of an intrigue for any politicians out there listening to this. What about if at some point you have, for example, parts of the Amazonian rainforest, highly protected, sort of land. Nobody wants to see the Amazon fall into the hands of developers, or maybe some, but it's probably only the developers that wanted to see it fall into their hands. The majority of people want it to remain as is. It's very important. So imagine this idea, and it's not just about the Amazon. It could be any national park, any national treasure. What about if there was a way in which governments could tokenize? Because, for example, let's take the Brazilian government. Do they need perhaps to see a way in which they can earn more income? I don't know, but let's just argue yes. Let's assume they do. In the past, what they could do is to sell off the land, but then we've seen where that goes. You have the land is cleared, and it's an economic. Sorry, basically it's a environmental is the word I was looking for. Environmental disaster. We don't want that. But what about, rather than just selling it to a handful of developers, you actually sell the same land, but to hundreds of millions of token holders? Because again, what we also see is that as we move forward into the different generations, is that we believe that it's going to be just as important to offer financial tools that make sense from a monetization point of view, but also those tools are going to have to also carry with them a sense of duty, a sense of ethics, a sense of morals. And therefore people will be expecting that when they hold a financial instrument like tokenization of an RWA, that it also has something else that makes them feel good. This is something that is going to become more and more apparent as the younger generations turn into adults, and they're looking to put their funds into investments. So I'll leave it there, because of course we are many steps away from what I've just mentioned about a possibility of tokenizing parts of the Amazon, for example. But it's not to say that it can't happen. And that's when you really start to see that actually tokenization of any real world asset, really there is no ceiling. You can just keep pushing and pushing the boundaries of this topic. And like I said, at the beginning of this interview, you're literally on every corner. There is something else that you say, aha, you have a light bulb moment where you say, aha, there's actually something else that can be tokenized. And it's heartwarming. It's great.
But it, of course, has to make sense, and it's for all the minds who's entering into this field to make ways in which it makes sense.
Yep.
So maybe tokenization is the answer for the question that people ask about the blockchain. Okay, we have a solution, but what was the problem? A lot of people have asked that regarding, but if it has to do with accessibility, liquidity, maybe also operational efficiency in the bank sector, and maybe then creating some types of new opportunities that you have described, Thomas. Maybe that could be a part of the role. But then you're also part of a politician discussion, maybe adoption discussion, I don't know. So let's just keep following the space and maybe get the timing a little back to now or the next weeks or months. When are you guys ready for the first tokenized asset? Lisa?
Yeah. So yes, we are still planning to launch our first tokenized asset anytime between 3 to 4 months from now. that's the current roadmap. Right now, our focus is that we're in the middle of a seed race for our platform utility token, and we'll move swiftly now into the private sale, then a public sale, and the TGE, or token generation event for our platform utility token, that's called Twix. That's scheduled for Q2. And we know from the current development status and also the status on getting the regulatory check boxes ticked that anytime between 3 to 4 months is what we expect before we can go live with the platform and offer our first tokenized asset, which is gold.
Thank you very much, then, Lise and Thomas, and we look forward to follow you as you go along, and also how this total industry spells out this year and next year, maybe especially. So, thank you very much, then.
Thank you,
Thank you, Morten.